I have personally had many YouTube channels, and I've also worked with some pretty big creators, and I've also worked with some small creators. And what's really interesting is even though I've spoken with people who quite literally have over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, some of them are broke behind the scenes. And some of the small YouTubers, or micro YouTubers, if you want to say, who I've worked with, they are making significantly more money. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to break down the complete blueprint to how to actually make money with YouTube, even as a small channel. And I know that you guys might be skeptical when I say that, but the reason that that happens sometimes really is because it doesn't matter how many people follow you. What matters is if they're the right follower. And we're going to get into this. This is going to be a little bit of a longer video, and it's going to require a little bit more of an attention span. So definitely get a cup of coffee and get ready to lock in here. First things first is you need to understand what YouTube is and what the goal is. Because I talk with so many people about YouTube, and they throw YouTube in a bucket with the rest of the social media platforms that exist out there, like Instagram, TikTok, and that stuff. And a lot of people in general just kind of they view all of it as like a toy, as like something that you just play around with or watch to be entertained. And yes, you can do that, but fundamentally, the reason, and particularly YouTube, in my opinion, so powerful, and the other platforms are as well, is mainly because if we break down the purpose of crushing it on YouTube, it's because it's a fantastic mechanism for traffic. And traffic makes up, 80+% of businesses. And the reason I love YouTube so much is because people come to YouTube with intent. But YouTube's the world's second most largest search engine after Google. But it's the world's largest video search engine. And Google owns YouTube, right? So because of that, a lot of people who come to YouTube are coming with intent, and they're not just mindlessly scrolling a lot of times. And it's because of this that I was able to literally, with a channel with only 26,000 subscribers, I was literally able to make 6 figures last month and get flown out by Gary Vaynerchuk here to New York City, which is the hotel room I'm at right now filming this. We actually have to leave here in a few hours, so I'm just filming this video before we head out. But that being said, getting into the actual blueprint, the first thing you need to understand is foundations. Okay, this is what we need to cover before I get into the actual actionable step-by-steps of the blueprint in order to make money on YouTube. And you need to understand how the algorithm fundamentally works. We currently live in an era called interest media. It's an era of interest media, which basically means that the way the YouTube algorithm works is it registers what you're talking about in your content, right? And then what it does is it feeds that content or tries to promote it to the people who it thinks would interact with that based off of interests. So if you make a YouTube video about knitting, YouTube's going to read the transcription, your title, your SEO, your description, all this stuff, and then it's going to push it to people who it thinks is also interested in knitting, right? This is what I mean when I say interest media. The algorithm is very advanced, and you can't just post content about whatever you want, whenever you want, and have it do really well. The algorithm will oftentimes just not push it, because the algorithm's main goal, it's a business with business goals. Its main goal is to keep people on the platform for longer, watching for longer. And they know the best way to do that is to feed content to people that are in line or have synergy with their own interests. Okay? So it's really important to understand this. So to sum this up, basically, the way YouTube or old YouTube used to work was it would essentially broadcast to the masses, and the new version of YouTube really, it's targeted to niches. And this is why it's important to not talk to everyone in your videos, but to a specific person, which is actually really nice and a blessing in disguise, because as a byproduct of this, it means that we don't need millions or even hundreds of thousands of subscribers or followers in order to make a good amount of money with YouTube. We don't need a ridiculous amount of traffic. We just need the right traffic. So your goal should basically be to create content that serves a specific group of people that have a specific problem that you can solve. Because when those things align, then growth and revenue are going to become a byproduct of your content. Now, the second step of the blueprint, now that you guys understand how the algorithm works, which is a very important context to have going into this, is something that I like to call the synergy triangle. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, but you really need, honestly, you must have 3 things dialed in. And these 3 things that you need to have, which I'll tell you in a second, they need to align in order for you to crush it when scaling a business with YouTube. Now, that basically is having extremely, extremely strong synergy or a bond between your audience, the content that you make, and the offer that you have. So your audience is the people who you are speaking to, the content being what the videos that you are actually making, and the offer being what you're selling. If there is a strong bond, or I like to say synergy between those things, then it's game over. You will absolutely 100% chance crush it on YouTube, regardless of the amount of traffic you're getting. Of course, if you get more of that traffic with that synergy, then you'll get better results than less, right? But this is why I call it the synergy triangle. It's because you need those three things in order for it to work really, really well for you. An example of this is basically, imagine, and I've seen this case with people I've worked with, they'll have great content, but the wrong audience. And that means that they're going to make no sales, because if they have great content, but the wrong audience, when they go to sell something, the audience won't convert. It's very simple, regardless of the number of people that are watching or subscribe to that creator. Now, what I most prevalently see, or what I see like honestly 80% of the time, if not more, with clients I work with, is they actually have the right audience. They make decent content, but they have a bad offer or no offer. This is what I see very, very often. So the synergy triangle actually breaks on the back end, which is the offer part. And this is just wasted traffic, because we are literally creating immense amounts of traffic and potential leads for nothing if we don't have an offer at all, or if we have a bad offer. What I like to call the power of alignment. It's when all of these three things come together. It's when all of them align together, because when that happens, you will have high conversions at pretty low effort. Take that with a grain of salt, because of course there is still effort involved, but it feels like you're playing the game of business and getting traffic for your business on easy mode when you have the synergy triangle dialed in. So just to recap, a very, very strong synergy between your audience, the content that you make, and the offer that you have. And in the cascading steps that we have in this blueprint today that I'm going to be sharing with you guys, we're going to go over how to dial these things in. But this is fundamentally, from a foundational infrastructural level, basically how small channels make big money, right? They have those three things really, really dialed in, and they have the right audience to the right offer. But with that being said, that leads us into step 3 of this blueprint. And step 3 of this blueprint is figuring out how to patch the hole of that third, honestly, most prevalent issue I find, which is the offer. So figuring out what to sell. I love to think about business like a game, and I love to think about offer creation like a coffee shop. Now, just to, give credit where credit's due, I learned this from one of my mentors named Fred. He told this analogy to me, and I fell in love with it ever since then. But essentially, when we look at coffee shops, think like Starbucks, for example. Coffee shops don't just sell one thing, but they're all the same niche, more or less, right? It's still like in the world of coffee. It's still the same ecosystem, if you will. But they have options for different customer types, right? When we look at a coffee shop, you might walk in and they sometimes have free samples, and usually that free sample is samples of their most expensive item. Then you have, let's say, coffee beans, right, when you're waiting in line, and then maybe you have black coffee, and then you have, like a fancy drink like a frappuccino or something like that. The way I love to think about operating a content-led business, so a business where most of your results or traffic comes from a content-led platform like YouTube, is essentially, and particularly with YouTube, because I don't really understand TikTok or Instagram well, I know with YouTube, we have something called a new audience, a casual audience, and a core audience. So if we have a new casual and core audience archetype of people viewing our channel, then it only makes sense that we position our business in a very similar way to a coffee shop, because they know that they also have a different positioning for different customers based off of the customer's wants and needs, all within the same ecosystem of coffee. Let me explain what I mean a little bit more in depth so you guys don't get lost here. I like to think about the free coffee sample that they give you when you walk into a coffee shop more so as like my free lead magnet, which is great for my new audience or my new viewer. I love to think about the black grounded coffee beans that sit in a bag while you're waiting in line as my low ticket for also my new viewer. And then I love to think about the black coffee as like the mid ticket, right, which is great for my casual viewer. And I like to think about the expensive drinks like the frappuccinos as my high ticket, which is great for my core viewers. Now, the reason this works so well, and this is exactly the archetype that I structured my business as. When last month I grew my business to 6 figures in 30 days, a little bit over 30 days, I did it with this structure, with this infrastructure archetype, whatever you want to call it. Because what I found is the reason why it works is because what you're doing is you're meeting people where they're at, right? And it creates multiple entry points for people who are at multiple different levels. And you're able to maximize revenue per follower when you do this. Because as I said, infrastructurally on YouTube, we have new casual and core audience members. And our new, 99% of the time, a new viewer is not going to go straight to my high ticket one-to-one coaching, right? A core viewer might, but the new viewer, they're going to convert way better, a higher conversion rate to anything I have if it's free or really cheap as a brand new viewer, right? So we're basically maximizing revenue per follower when we do this. And just to be super transparent in the nature of trying to give immense amounts of value, I'm going to completely open up and explain how this works for my business right now. I'm going to open up my Figma page and I'll just show this to you. Basically, like the way I like to think about it is like the vehicle. Okay, so in this case, in my coffee analogy, the vehicle is just a coffee shop, right? My vehicle with the current structure of my business at the moment of filming this video is education, right? For you, maybe it's services. For you, maybe it's SaaS or software, whatever it is, right? For me, it's education, right? I look at this free lead magnet as my low ticket or really my entry point for people to interact with me and get tons of value. For me, that's a completely free course where I solve people's initial pain points or problems, right? And then I have the low ticket kind of coffee beans, which is my YouTube premium. It's a monthly price to join my premium course. I have my mid ticket, which is my black coffee, which is my VIP program inside of this same education vehicle. And then I have my high ticket, which is like the Frappuccino. And this is my one-to-one coaching. So I basically structure my business exactly the same way that a coffee shop does. But this leads perfectly into the 4th step of this blueprint to make money on YouTube, which is a question I get asked far, far, far too much. And when we get to this point of, anytime I'm talking about this with anybody, when I get to this point, the biggest, most frequent question that's asked is about the free lead magnet. And I like to view the free lead magnet as, I like to call it the Trojan horse. And I wanted to make this point in this video because it's the biggest question I get asked all the time when talking to people in my community or talking to people anytime I'm on calls or anything going over a similar kind of blueprint that I'm going over right now. It's always the question, great, what do I make as my free lead magnet? All the time. It's the same question. There's something called the rule of uncomfortable generosity. I absolutely love this concept. This is the concept that I really try to lean into with everything I have as much as I possibly can when trying to come up with my free lead magnets. What in the world do I mean when I say I try to lean into something called the rule of uncomfortable generosity? Well, when I think about lead magnets, I try to sit there and brainstorm basically until I feel extremely uncomfortable. Right? Let me explain. When I say I try to brainstorm until I feel extremely uncomfortable, I mean, I'm thinking about, all right, what are the biggest pain points? What are the biggest problems that people who follow me or watch me have? What is that? Once I write down like a list of usually 5 to 10 different things, I will then write down what would be something that I could give them. I don't think about numbers, whether it's paid or whether it's free. I just try to think about value as the only currency in this brainstorming session. And I basically think about what could I create? What could I give them to completely solve this problem? And then whatever those things are, I will then, after writing them down, I will then go through that list and I'll ask myself, is this a good free lead magnet? And the second I start to feel like, oh my gosh, this is such a good resource, I could probably sell this for quite a bit and crush it, that's when I know I got a good free lead magnet. The second I have that feeling that I could sell it and do really well selling it, and then I think about giving it away for free and I feel uncomfortable because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is super uncomfortable to think about giving something so valuable away for free. That's when you know you have a free lead magnet. That's when you know you've hit the jackpot with a free lead magnet that will convert better than anything else for you. Every single free lead magnet that moved the needle for me, like not 0 to 60, but like basically like having a bicycle to jumping into a Formula 1 F1 car. Whenever I went from like bicycle to F1 car level of growth in terms of both time and growth, It is when I had created and offered and given away free lead magnets that made me extremely uncomfortable doing what I just told you right now. Now, something Alex Hormozi talks about that resonates with me at such a high degree, and it's so true, is, and the reason why it's so important to give away free lead magnets that feel uncomfortable because they're so valuable, is because it creates an incredibly good first impression. And first impressions, they matter way more than people think. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's been, hundreds of years people have known first impressions matter, but I feel like it's been something that has gotten diluted as of recently. But in terms of business and even online business, when somebody downloads something like a free lead magnet and it's garbage, like when you basically take a turd and try to polish that turd and then give it away for free, even though it's polished, like it's still a turd at the end of the day, right? Like, and people are going to have a bad taste in their mouth, and they're going to be like, oh, that was like really subpar. That wasn't a good free lead magnet. I'm not super amped to join into whatever they have paid, right? Because so far, my first impression with them, with their products, with their offers, is not all that. Versus if you give away an insanely free lead, like valuable free lead magnet, their first impression with you will be like, whoa, I can't believe that I just got that for free. That was insane. Now, because they were like, that was so much value I just received for free, I can't imagine how good their paid product is. I have literally spoken, I interview a lot of people who do one-to-one coaching with me, and also people who join into any paid thing I have, and I'll ask them, like, what is it that made you finally like jump over the fence and get over the hurdle and opt into my paid thing? I would say an overwhelming majority always tell me the same thing. It was because of how impressed I was with your free lead magnet and the quick wins and results that got me. So that's why you need to do it. Also, yet another reason why you should focus on value first is because when you focus on value first, you pre-sell buyers or potential buyers, right? Like you don't have to sit around and do super hard selling to these cold leads. Well, my exposure got really dark. It's because it's starting to snow here. Can't see it, but it's starting to snow and now it's getting dark. There's clouds over the head. So basically, when you focus on value first, that value does a lot of the pre-selling for you. So you don't have to do hard selling. You know, people come to you already convinced, and trust is built before you even ever need to ask for a card to put on file or anything. And I've experienced this firsthand with a lot of products that we've done or we've pitched or we've sold, because we have such a good free lead magnet. Usually it doesn't require that much to take them over the line into something paid. Now, with that being said, what does actually make a great lead magnet? Because this is something that I feel like not a lot of people talk about, but it's a question I get asked all the time. And this is rudimentary, super, super simple stuff, but it's because it works, and it's because it's the truth. Like, what makes a great lead magnet is really I figured out it's really three main things. One, it solves one specific problem that a majority of your audience has. Meaning, a great free lead magnet is something that solves a problem that is a problem for your new, casual, and core audience. Okay, which takes a little bit of brainstorming. The second thing that makes a fantastic lead magnet is something that delivers a quick win. When they do it, they can very quickly get a win or get something in return. For example, with my free course, like literally one day after somebody started taking that, they messaged me and had a viral outlier video. That is an example of a quick win. And three, and guys, this is the most important part in my opinion, is what makes a great lead magnet, the third and final thing, is it needs to naturally lead to your paid offers, okay? So, for example, I will, in my free course, which is my current free lead magnet right now, after every single video, I talk about how this was just scratching the surface compared to what I go into in my premium, my next tier up. My next, if they're getting a sample from me, it's going to be like the black coffee, right? Like, hey, this was the sample, but if you want to go actually get the full thing, you can go do that, because this was just scratching the surface. After every one of my videos, I do that, and I have links to join straight to that one. And then at the very end of the free course, I basically have an entire VSL where I talk about the next tier up. Or my old free lead magnet, which was a custom trained AI GPT and YouTube strategy, and that one crushed it for me. That lead magnet, I literally, inside of the instructions of the GPT, I told it, after every like 10 to 15 prompts, make sure that you pitch my offer to the person using the GPT. So when they're using ChatGPT and they're asking it a question and they're asking their 10th question of the day, ChatGPT will now, my custom GPT built in ChatGPT will now respond to that user and say, wow, you're really taking YouTube seriously. I see that, you're asking a lot of questions. I think that the YouTube Premium that Dylan offers would be a great option for you. You can book a call here and it'll have a link to book a call. You can do that, guys, with AI and with custom GPTs. And this is what I mean by making sure that your lead magnet naturally leads to your paid offer. Great. Now that you know how to create a great lead magnet and what it means to have a great lead magnet, now you're ready to go over step 5 of this blueprint, which is what I call very originally conversion. Let's just dissect this ever so slightly. What's the whole reason that you build a free lead magnet in the first place? What's the whole reason that we're focusing on so much value first? Well, all of it, it's really to just nurture a person into a conversion, right? I would say 99% of people aren't making YouTube videos, investing in the investments that are required to make YouTube videos. One of the biggest being time. I could bet that 99% of people aren't doing that just because they think it's fun. You might think it's fun, that's fine. I also enjoy creating YouTube videos. But it's really because there's a bigger goal, a bigger plan. And that plan is typically to convert those viewers from YouTube into something, i.e. your business, your offer, whatever it is, right? So the reason that we do YouTube is that, and the reason that we have a free lead magnet is to help increase said conversions. It's very simple. Free content to free thing to paid thing. Like it literally doesn't get more simple than that. Now, at the risk of going a little bit too deep right now, I basically just want to run down how I do this. And I don't want to confuse anybody. I'm going to try to explain it very simplistically, but essentially the super simple system I use is I have content to my free lead magnet. When somebody joins my free lead magnet, I capture their email in exchange for them getting access to my free lead magnet. And then what I do is I create inside my email software of choice, which you can, I'm pretty software agnostic, but you can use something like StanStore. They have a great email feature, or you could use something like Kit, formerly known as ConvertKit. Whatever you want to use. What I do is I create an automated sequence email flow inside of that email software that I'm using that basically the second somebody joins my free lead magnet, they automatically get sent emails to them that are pre-written by me because it's an automated sequence. So I might pre-write, 20 to 30 emails that send to them over the span of 30 to 60 days. And every single one of those emails pushes them to my main offer, whatever that is for you. Book a call, sign up now, buy my thing, whatever it is, etc. Now, why does email matter? Well, it matters because you own your own audience at that point, right? Like YouTube could go down tomorrow. You could have 100,000 subscribers, but if YouTube goes down tomorrow, like you're done for, right? You lose that audience. That's a rented audience. But if you can bring that audience into something proprietarily owned, like your email newsletter or list, well, now you own that audience. You have a list of people where you have their name and their contact information, and you can reach out to them with anything. Like that is an own audience, and that is powerful. It is something that people sleep on way too much. You have a direct line to your audience without any algorithms interfering with you. It is probably, in my opinion, at least in my experience, one of the highest return on investments of any marketing channel. Again, at least in my experience, like the amount of money that I've closed through the emails, like through this structure right here, has honestly been insane. Like it blows me away. Dude, this is coming down, man. Look at this. It's coming down right now. I'm in the middle of filming a YouTube video, but I just had to record this. This is crazy. Look at this. Look at this. It's coming down. It's snowing like crazy. Midway filming. You could tell I'm not used to snow. This is super rad. Are you kidding me? All right, let's get back to this blueprint here. So anyways, just remember to just keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate this because it can easily get overcomplicated. And what's really great about this system right here is you could pre-write your email sequence just one time, and then it's done. And then every time somebody joins your opts into your free lead magnet, it automatically gets sent to them. And then just, let the automation that you build through the emails and the whole free lead magnet system, just let it work for you and focus most of your efforts on the next step of this blueprint. And the next step of this blueprint is traffic. Now this one's super simple. It's what most of my channel is about. It's about traffic, via YouTube. But I'm going to give you the advice that Gary Vaynerchuk gave me. It wasn't yesterday, it was the day before yesterday. The day before yesterday when I was at VaynerMedia with him. He basically, I asked him the question about what he would do if everything got stripped from him, what would he do in order to generate the most traffic with YouTube? Basically, his answer to me was volume at focus, right? So focus volume, so you're not just creating noise, but volume so that you're coming out with as many opportunities for your ICP ideal client profile to, have a touch point with you via your content. So how I basically like to think about this is, or how I like to think about traffic, it's really like a car. And a car can't go anywhere if it doesn't have gas, right? Forget about electric cars for a second because it ruins my analogy. But let's say you have a car, it's a gas car. You can't go anywhere if you don't have gas in that car. Well, a business is the same thing, but in terms of traffic. A business can't run without traffic. A business without traffic is just an idea, and that's real. So with that being said, your job is to post as much valuable content as you possibly can that is focused, right? You should be focusing on the things that matter. And I'm going to break down what I mean by value in just a second. But first, just straight up, the two things that matter the most is a good idea and good packaging for that idea, because if they don't click, they don't watch. And the third most important thing is just making sure that what you're talking about, what you're making videos about, has synergy between your audience and your offer, okay? So that's what I mean when I say post as much focused volume as possible. And it's what I can only imagine Gary meant as well. Now, what does value actually mean? I told you I'd tell you what that actually means. And it doesn't mean what most people think it means, because most people think it means this crazy editing or this crazy overproduced content, whatever. Value in terms of, when I say make a good video by creating value, I mean genuinely providing value to your specific ICP or ideal client profile. And listen, value it's relative. For some people, value is entertainment, right? When some people go and watch Mr. Beast, the value that they get or the perceived value that they expect to get from Mr. Beast is entertainment. For other people, it's tips and advice, like the content that you're watching from me, right? The key here is you need to match the viewer's perceived expectation of value that they have when going to click and watch your content, and then you want to exceed it. And just one final point about traffic here that I want to mention is don't focus on views, but optimize for them. What do I mean? A lot of people say to just views don't matter, but they're wrong. Views do matter to a certain degree. What doesn't matter is subscribers, okay? Because you could have 1 million subscribers, but if only 2,000 people watch, then it doesn't matter how many subscribers you have. What matters is how much engagement you're getting per video. With that being said, a lot of people say, you don't need to focus on views. But I fundamentally disagree, because the way the algorithm is, which is interest media focus, and if we're doing our job correctly and we are creating strong synergy between our audience, our content, and our offer, then the more views we get, as long as they maintain our ideal client profile persona, then you're going to just generate way better results, right? If I have, my total addressable market of my ideal client profile, it's definitely over 1 to 5 million people, 100%. So I know that I should be optimizing for views. Now, what do I mean when I say don't focus on views, optimize for them? I say don't focus on views because I like to view everything as inputs versus outputs. Focusing on views is out of our control. That is an output that we have zero control over, right? We cannot control the algorithm, but optimizing for views brings the control back into our favor, into our hands, right? When I say optimize for views, how do you optimize for views? You create better thumbnails, better ideas, better packaging altogether, including titles, everything. Now what you're doing is you're focusing on value, your better hooks, that kind of stuff. When you optimize for views, you give 110% into every action item when it comes to creating a YouTube video. And a byproduct of that, which is the ironic part, is you typically end up getting more views, okay? Now, this is why I say optimize for views, but don't focus on them, because when we optimize for them, we are controlling the inputs, but when we focus on them, we're controlling, or we're focusing on something we have no control of, which is the outputs. And also, I find that when people just say, I'm not focusing for views, so I don't care if this really gets a lot of views. They're using that as an excuse to not focus, put the time and energy that you need to into the things that matter, like your idea or like your thumbnail and title. With that being said, don't focus on views, but optimize for them. Now, that brings us to the 7th step of this blueprint, which is one of my favorite things that Gary Vee said. Just in conversation, he said it, but it stuck with me. And it's basically scale the unscalable. This is basically a very counterintuitive strategy, and it was one that Gary Vee mentioned, but also Gary Vee's team specifically talked a lot about. So sometimes the stuff that feels unscalable actually is the most scalable, and it's usually the things that feel unscalable that people completely shy away from, like altogether. And the Gary Vaynerchuk's team used Taylor Swift as an example, and I absolutely love this. Basically, Taylor Swift will sometimes get tagged on social media about somebody who's getting married, and sometimes she will fly out or travel to them to show up and surprise them at their wedding and play a couple songs and then leave, right? That definitely, if you think about Taylor Swift's team, that is something that on the surface is extremely unscalable. Right? Extremely, especially with probably how busy she is in her schedule. It's, probably considered wasted time to them. But the social impact is far more powerful than literally any talk show that she could go on to, like Jimmy Kimmel or anything. The social impact that she'll have across all digital platforms is exponentially more powerful and impactful than any other PR thing that she could possibly do that would seem scalable. And that's the whole point here, because like if she goes and does these unscalable tasks that, are scaling the unscalable, the story will spread, the loyalty will deepen way more with her fans, and even people who aren't her fans, they'll be like, oh wow, that was pretty cool. Like, I'm not a fan of Taylor Swift, but that's pretty cool, right? People might think that. Like, her brand grows exponentially because she's scaling the unscalable. And when you apply this to business, sometimes maybe when you're riding on cloud 9, you might start to feel, too good or too busy to send some random person from, some random middle of nowhere place in the world who messages you and says, hey man, like, I really like your content. Like, we might feel too good or maybe too busy to take the time to send a quick voice message to them. But do it, because that's scaling the unscalable, right? Personal touches at small scale will equal massive word of mouth at large scale. And these, inefficient actions build the kind of loyalty that money can't buy and will make you a lot of money as a byproduct. So that is the 7-step blueprint to making money on YouTube that I could guarantee you not very many people have talked about, but this is me talking to you from genuine real world experience, and proof is in the pudding. I'm literally in a hotel room right now paid by Gary Vaynerchuk. Spent a day with him. Super cool, very insightful. With that being said, if you guys want to, join my free lead magnet, like I mentioned several times in here, you could go and click the link below to join that free course, because, in addition to, of course, dialing this aspect of things in, you also want to make sure that you understand how to leverage YouTube to the best of your ability, right? To grow on YouTube. And that's what I teach you in that free course. Or if you guys just want to stay here on YouTube on the platform, you guys could check out another free course I have all about growing on YouTube. It's about 4 hours long. You can click right here to watch that next. With that being said, I'm going to go out in the city one last time before I have to travel back home. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.